Hey there, Internet. My name is Jack Packard. Been counting the days I've been without you. 1, 2, 3, 4, here for The Escapist.
I'm Darren Mooney, and I'm guessing 5, 6, 7, 8.
I'm Casey Wosu, and I won't play this game. I'm bad at math.
This week, we will be talking about episode 8 of WandaVision, previously on. So hello and welcome. This is A Marvelous Escape. Whoa! Now featuring Kung Fu moves.
I thought we'd get a little kung fu, action in this episode, and we kind of didn't.
We kind of didn't.
We did get the patented Elizabeth Olsen has a really good chiropractor sequence, to be fair.
Ooh.
Which I kind of like, because I mean, like, when you're doing superhero movies, everybody has to have their own distinct, like, hand things. Like, Michael Fassbender is the best kind of tickling the invisible nipples kind of actor out there. But I think that, to give Olsen credit, Olsen, like, obviously put in a scene in kind of, like, Age of Ultron. It's like, well, look, you've got all these other actors who are used to doing this CGI stuff. I want you to come up with something unique and distinctive. And she's like, all right. You've seen The Exorcist, right?
That's true. So, as we discussed a little bit before we started recording here, this episode is called Previously On because once again in WandaVision, the entire episode is dedicated to checking all the boxes that they have set up in previous episodes. Now, there's a lot of good in there, but it's also... it's a little frustrating that it's just like, okay, all these mysteries we set up, instead of answering them episode by episode, little bit, answering them as we go along naturally as you would tell a story, you get an info dump of an episode. And while it was some fun, it's still an info dump.
And like,
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah.
It's also... honestly, like, I get that it is an info dump, but I kind of liked this one in a lot of ways, especially because it was the second one. It was paced just like the first one was. Like, you got 3 episodes of, mystery, and then they catch you up. Then you got 3 episodes of, more events, mystery, and then they catch you up. So they also paired it with a lot of backstory, which, again, is still info. It's still an info dump. But it was needed info because there were a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we were speculating on from the very beginning legit just didn't know, and we're waiting for the episode to kind of tell us about at some point.
Right.
And so, like, this was 1, a confirmation of some of our theories, and 2, just giving us the rest of the story, which I tend to appreciate. Like, I like it when a story kind of tells the story, weirdly enough.
So whoa, I was controversial hot takes here from KC.
None of this postmodernist abstract colors on a screen nonsense. Being honest, I thought it was a bit of a risky move, coming towards the end of the season, to have, like, Elizabeth Olsen beam down to the planet where she got struck by the poison thorn, and the only way for her to recover from it was to have these flashbacks to earlier episodes. I thought that was a very controversial decision to take. Very controversial. It's a reference to Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, I've never seen...
I thought Jack would get it.
I'm like, this will make sense eventually. I'll just stay on board.
That joke made sense to someone. There's so much Star Trek Next Generation in here, I can't remember specific episodes. I'm very sorry.
But anyway,
unless it's about Beverly Crusher having sex with a ghost, then it's not my wheelhouse. That's a thing that happened, Casey.
None of this is tracking for me.
A candle, not even like a ghost that lives in a candle.
Yes, that's a real thing that happened in a Star Trek Next Generation.
And he's Scottish.
That's, for some reason, that's really important.
I feel like it's the little details that make it there. Yeah. But no, what I will say is that, like, I actually, to be fair, did quite enjoy the use of television language. This is the clip show, the flashback episode, ironically showing you clips that you haven't seen already, which is quite a nice little bit of convention. And there's some really, really good stuff in there. That sequence with her and Vision on the bed, it breaks my little heart.
Yes.
It's really, really well done. Good performances from everybody involved. On the other hand, I just kind of find myself at this point, this is exactly what I dreaded when the show was starting. I was like, this is all so interesting and fun and weird and unusual. And it's like, as soon as they start answering these questions, they're going to pick many of the least interesting answers to go with. And I mean, we'll talk about some of those later on. But like, I'm in a weird situation coming out of this episode where I have more questions than I had going into it, right? So to pick I know they're questions that the show's not going to answer, because the reason the show has framed things in the way that it has is to construct the narrative and to get the audience to feel a particular way and to manipulate the audience using the conventions and language of television and film. So why did Agatha Harkness, who has never met Wanda Maximoff before, go by the name of Agnes for 6-7 episodes before this? Why in the name of goodness did she do that? What purpose did that serve? What was the end that was accomplishing, apart from getting us the nice drop of "my name is Agatha Harkness" so the 10 Agatha Harkness fans can pump their fists in the air? The other one is the Tyler Hayward revelation that we get in this episode, which is that Wanda didn't actually steal Vision's corpse and isn't riding him around Weekend at Bernie's style. And I'm really disappointed that I caved so easily to you guys on that when you said, yeah, it's definitely his corpse. Should have fought back stronger, because there's no way that Disney was ever going to let Wanda ride her dead boyfriend around town for like 8
They
episodes.
showed us the corpse, Darren. We only have the information that they give us. They showed us the corpse.
It was a deliberate trick. This was part of what we kind of got upset about last episode. Like, they showed us things knowing we would think certain things. So like, it was a straight up lie. Like, sure, the possibility was there that it was all in her head, but there was nothing to suggest that based on everything else we knew. So like, they straight up lied and then changed what happened after the fact, which feels like cheating.
Anyway, what I will say is, though, I should have stuck to my guns. I should have been like, no way that Disney's going to let them do this. I do like that it is sex positive, though, because at least Disney's encouraging masturbation rather than necrophilia. So I guess that's something, right? But the problem that I have is, like, why did Tyler lie about that? Why did Tyler need to make up that information? He doesn't need to get anybody on side against Wanda. She's holding an entire town hostage. Like, it's not like he needs a little evil cherry on top. It's like, well, she stole some government property too, so get her! It just doesn't feel like it makes sense in the world of the story, but it makes sense in terms of him being the villain. The only reason for him to do that is so the audience goes, look, we knew we were right not to trust him, because clearly he's lying about Wanda, who we love and is our hero.
Like, that particular thing is really like self-explanatory for me, which is he was doing that for Monica, right? Like, he needed to convince Monica. He specifically showed that clip to Monica, even though he showed it to the whole room, to get her on board. So Wanda stole Vision, even though she didn't. But then that raises other logistical questions, which is, how were they tracking the Vision that wasn't their Vision within the Hex? That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, I really thought that was odd that they decided to say, like, no, this is a completely different Vision than the one Hayward made up a story about. Because, yeah, like, I'm like, so why did he need to lie? Wanda did take over a town. Like, she did do that.
Right.
Like, that is that's enough reason to be worried about the situation. And also, Hayward knew that from the start. He knew, because Wanda showed up at
Sword.
She showed up as Sword, left, and then, big anomaly happens, what, like 15, 20 miles away from their compound? So, like, when the FBI guy, I forget his name now.
Jimmy
Woo, yeah.
Jimmy Woo. When Jimmy Woo calls Sword for help because something weird happened 20 miles from...
And he
like,
needs
how
a
does
drone.
he not know that? Yeah, like, how do you not know that? Like, why are you sending Rambeau by herself to, like it's weird and roundabout. Mm-hmm. And, like, I don't understand what the purpose of that was. Like, maybe we'll get answers next episode, but it does feel sloppy now.
Yeah, it does, and getting back on a bit of the positivity train, because we're going to bounce back and forth, because like Darren mentioned, like that the moment that we get with Wanda and Vision, kind of directly after the Age of Ultron.
What is grief but love?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's
that really
so
is beautiful.
The sequence with tiny Wanda and Pietro and her parents. Her father was a bootleg seller. That's where she got her love of television. That is that entire sequence when, like, they were just a happy family watching TV together was beautiful. Only to get a bomb literally dropped on him. That, like, adds a ton of character context to why she chose, the theme of television. And I think that was really poignant and beautiful. But, witches are real. Okay, so witches are a real thing. That's fine in the MCU. Wanda has witch powers, and here's where we get, it's actually really poignant that they discussed shenanigans a lot in that sequence with her and her parents, because guess who's pulling some shenanigans? It's Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because now Wanda had magical powers and the Mind Stone only amplified them, which is some retcon bullshit.
I think my big issue with that, though, is that, like, it's not even, like, the continuity retcon. Like, I can manage witches being real in the world of Marvel. Although I do have some issues that we'll come back to about that. Like, there's some... Like, one of the things that slightly frustrated me about this episode was every single time it had an opportunity to make an interesting choice, it picked the middle of the road. So things like... So witches are real. The Salem witch trials actually happened. This is huge and big, right? But obviously the Salem witch trials in history are tied up in all sorts of things about systemic power, patriarchy, abuse of women, this use of male authority to suppress women who are perceived as being different. So our witch trial is going to be conducted by women, so none of that subtext gets into this whatsoever. So when we talk about witches, we want you to know it's not a gender thing, just to be clear. There's also the weird bit where the bomb falls on her house, and it's like when she ends up like joining Hydra, and then obviously Agnes is like, so a bomb dropped on your house and you joined an anti-freedom death cult. And it's like, no, that's not what happened. An American-made bomb dropped on her house and she joined a radical anti-American terrorist cell. And that was explicitly the point of Age of Ultron. Acknowledge that stuff. Like, that's the context for what you're seeing here. It's not that she hates freedom.
I felt that they had Agnes say those lines specifically to paint her once again as the bad guy. Like, I don't feel like they were trying to use her to soften or kind of like discredit Wanda's motivations, because like she was super justified. It was Agnes being a jerk about her justification, and that's supposed to sell you on her also being the bad guy. Like that's what I got from that.
Okay. Yeah. But again, like the witch thing, it kind of felt like it was kind of taking a step back from like what was a potentially interesting choice to make with the character.
Yes.
That's my thing. And again, the thing with the witches and my problem with her having always been a witch and the implication that Agnes makes, and I think the episode supports us going along with this, that like the bomb dropping on her house in Age of Ultron, it didn't go off. It was just defective. Right. And so she stared at it all night. And that's a really harrowing story where like something that was meant to kill you through some fluke of fate didn't manage to do it. 1 in a million shot. Never could have happened to anybody. You sit there and you stare at it and you wait for death to happen and it never comes. And it's really moving. Now it's, oh yeah, but she was a superhero all along. And that feels like it kind of cheapens a lot of the emotional, at least for me, cheapens a lot of the emotional resonance, where it's like, if that bomb had dropped anywhere else, it would have exploded. But because Wanda's special, it didn't. And it's like, no,
because
you're
she
getting...
used the comic tie-in probability hex, which, that's fun. But like Wanda specifically did the magic fingers towards the bomb. Wanda was actively trying to do it. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. That's like you said, both sides, middle of the road BS, where it's like, blah, blah, blah.
Sorry.
Blah, 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 blah. That's what I feel about that. Blah, 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 blah.
I do, to be honest, like I was kind of a fan of them going down this retcon rabbit hole, because while I am disappointed that they did kind of chicken out, like they completely pulled away from all of the multiverse type stuff, like the introduction of mutants or whatever, like they haven't given us that answer yet. Like they hinted at it. It was exactly what I think Darren said, where like they got Evan Peters to be just some random dude and like play on our knowledge of outside the universe that he was, Quicksilver from another universe. He's just a random dude, says Agatha.
Yeah.
Right?
Fake-tro.
So
Fake-tro.
So like they used all that to lead us down this path, and now they're like slowly taking it away. Like that I'm kind of annoyed by. But I think it's kind of cool that Wanda was already a witch and that the Mind Stone only made her as a powerful enough witch to be an Avenger. Like to me that kind of tracks and makes sense. But I can definitely see how, like, the original story being as good as it was, giving it this new sort of context can take away from what, you know, was there already. So like I understand the disappointment for sure.
Well, and you know what I will say is, you know, as an old school comics fan, seeing like the Scarlet Witch, you know, explode out of the Mind Stone, even just in silhouette, I was that's what I want. You know, I want the big goofy costumes, I want the big witchy powers. So that was
White
you know,
Vision, like from John Byrne's West Coast Avengers run and stuff like that as well. You know, I mean,
Yes.
again, like good fan servicey stuff, like the Halloween costumes and stuff. It's like, you know, stuff that's fun and makes sense in terms of story.
Yeah. Yeah, but here we are in this wibbly wobbly area where Agatha is now a very clear villain. They had a whole song about it last time, but also Wanda did this. Very specifically, Wanda did this, but she still doesn't know how she did this, so she gets that get out of jail free pass that I was really hoping they weren't gonna pull, because like again, you know, her tragic backstory with the American bomb dropping, her being experimented on, being used by Ultron, being abandoned by all of her friends, which they do specifically pardon me, which they do specifically call out here. She, you know, I was alone, my brother was dead, and Vision was the only one who comforted me. That is prime villain backstory, understandable, deep villain backstory. And nope, I don't know what happened. I was sad.
like
and
in her
something
grief,
happened.
it just explodes out of her.
Yeah.
Like, and Agatha even says magic on autopilot. So like, just
Yes.
completely divorces her from any agency in what she's been doing. Like,
I
she's,
mean,
she's
women
just
and
a
their
victim like
emotions,
everybody else.
am I right?
But Jack, crucially, it's a woman saying it to another woman, so we can't get in trouble for it very carefully and very, very meticulous. But what I will say, actually, this is kind of something that I kind of want to push a little bit back on, because I know you're very fond of the idea of like Wanda becoming a villain, and I you know, again, not to be too forceful, I don't think you're like, you want her to be full mustache twirling, you want her to be sympathetic, kind of like Loki. And again, you get that sense that you have with Loki, where like Agnes is introduced. She's like, please, Dad, please, Mom, I mean, Dad, I mean, Odin, I mean, Mother Witch, I know I let you down, but I can be a real witch too.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that worked for Loki, so let's try it with Agnes. What I will say is that it's more what I kind of wanted from Wanda's journey, or what I expected from Wanda's journey. And it's, again, really, really frustrating, because you look at something that like modern film and television is getting much better at. Something like, say, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which aired on the CW for 4 seasons.
Fantastic show,
or
yeah.
Fantastic show, which is, again, about somebody who was going through a mental breakdown and destroying the lives of the people around her, and did not have reality-altering powers, but still managed to screw up absolutely everything. But, like, through a journey towards acceptance and responsibility, became a better person as a result. Something like, say, Legion, to pick another superhero example, where the main character has reality warping powers and abuses them and gets called out on them, and like makes the choice when he is called out on them not to retreat or not to apologize or not to try and get better, but instead to double down and say, no, I will make the world right. That's kind of something, that's what I wanted from Wanda, or the treatment of Wanda on the show. And the really frustrating part of it is that it's that aspect of, you know, they did make Wanda responsible for the blast or for changing the town, but it is, and again, that's something that I think people, like, I suspect people in the comments are going to be like, you guys were wrong, they did make her responsible, see, you didn't call it right. But they did it in such a way that, as Casey pointed out, it removed all her agency. It was never her fault. She didn't control it. She didn't plan for it to happen. And, like, even the way in which it's presented, that sequence where she drives into town and you see Westfield as it was, or Westview as it was, you see it run down. It's dilapidated.
Yeah.
People are, like, sitting outside boarded up cafes, waiting for friends who have disappeared. Nobody's going to piano lessons. Pools are overflowing with, like, leaves because they haven't been cleaned or tidied. Houses are sitting there unbuilt. And, like, literally, literally you have the episode present Wanda making Westview great again. Like taking it back to 50s nostalgia and it being presented as something that is almost an act of charity, because look at the town now. The town, and again, it's something that you see if you look at, say, Superman and Lois during the week, its portrayal of Smallville, where it's like, look at this classic 1950s small town American life. Look at what it's become. If only somebody could give it a new coat of paint. And, you know, sure, maybe brainwashing and holding hostage an entire town isn't a great thing to do, but look, they're all having fun. They're all still together with couples.
Look at how awful they were feeling beforehand. Now they have something to do.
Yeah, like it's really, really frustrating because like it's the way, and it's not even like nobody says it. Nobody actually says it out loud, but the way the camera presents it, the way the show presents it, it's like, well, I mean, what were they going to do for the past week anyway? Sit around and feel sorry for themselves? It's like, well, hey, at least they have an interesting story now. Am I right? And that really frustrated me. That aspect of it just really got me. And it's like, and because so much of the rest of the story is so moving and so sympathetic, because you do feel sorry for Wanda, the show is incapable of accepting that you might both feel sorry for Wanda and also realize that what she's doing is terrible and maybe going to therapy might be like a viable solution for somebody in her situation. Right. The show wants you to go, geez, poor Wanda, and won't somebody think of Wanda? And it's like, you know, it is possible for both of those things to be true.
Yeah.
For her to be both like doing something terrible and deserve our empathy and compassion. And that frustrated me. About
we see that a lot actually in the X-Men comics, where, you know, like when a new mutant's power erupts, a lot of times they hurt the people around them and it's not their fault. And them dealing with this sudden outburst of power can lead to some very interesting stories. It's right there. It's right there from the pages of the comics. Okay, this is an accident, right? The Hex is an accident, and now she has to deal with that throughout the episodes of the show. But no, it's an accident, but none of that really matters because Agatha's there and she's the real bad guy. Am I right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've already had, like, again, I don't want to go back to it because we've already had 2 cinematic adaptations of it, but, like, the Dark Phoenix saga from the late 70s and 80s, which is a story about a woman, and again, like, it's really odd when your, like, 1970s or 80s, like, parable about a woman using her power beyond her control is somehow more feminist or more engaged with the idea of gender than the one you're doing in 2021. Yeah. But, like, John Byrne, Chris Claremont, it hasn't aged perfectly, but the basic arc of the Dark Phoenix saga is Jean has lived a very repressed life. She's never been able to express herself. She's never been given agency. She's never been allowed to kind of come out of her shell or use her powers to the best of her ability. And then all of a sudden she's like taken in by Mastermind, who is similar to Agnes, has a similar role to Agnes in this story. The person who's whispering in her ear, the person who's manipulating her, who's using her power, who's going to harness it for dark ends. And then all of a sudden Mastermind goes, oh, holy fuck, what have I done? She's infinitely more powerful than I expected her to be. She breaks free. She uses the power of the Phoenix and she destroys an entire planet. And at the end of that arc, and again, Jim Shooter's reign at Marvel, reign of terror, perhaps even one might say, you know, it had its dark spots and he didn't always pick the right choices when he was dealing with the staff. But Jim Shooter actually said to Claremont and Byrne, she burnt a planet alive. There need to be consequences. She can't be the hero of this story after doing that. And it's really, really weird that, like, now, you know, 42 years later, we're like, yeah, but what if she was?
What my novel presupposes is what if she was?
I do still think there's a chance that they want Wanda as the bad guy, but because she used to be a good, well, she was also a bad guy before as well, that they turned into a good guy. But because she used to be a good guy because she's so close to Vision, who was always a good guy, like he came from Iron Man, so, you know, he can't possibly be bad. They just need to soften it as much as possible. And like, this is their roundabout, well, not even roundabout, like it's very clear. They want you to sympathize with Wanda. They don't want anything. they want all of Wanda's actions to feel justified, no matter how horrible they are to the people around them, because other people are being more horrible than Wanda. Like, don't blame Wanda for all this. Just look at what Hayward did. Look at what Agatha did. Like, like sure, she was bad, but these guys were worse. Like, so like deflect as much as you possibly can. And she will still, I think, at the end of this, I think a lot of people who were commenting in the chats were right. Like, it's gonna be a situation where she's gonna have to choose between Vision or the kids. And either she will have to get one or the other, or she'll get both, and that's going to be her arc of basically saying like, well, I'm going to be selfish now. And her getting what she wants is, you know, at an inconvenience to everybody else who would want to stop her. And so that's why she's a villain. But we all, as the audience, don't really care that much because, you know,
like
she's
her.
not that bad.
I suppose that's a probable way it's going to go. I think, you know, like kind of getting into thoughts for next episode is, you know, like one, we have to figure out what Monica has been doing this whole time, because apparently she's just been sitting outside while they went on a magical adventure through Wanda's mind.
It's magic. It takes like 2 seconds for all that to happen.
Right?
She's chilling with Factro. It's like, wow, Evan Peters, I loved you on American Horror Story. It's like, shh, my CIA agent Jimmy Woo's meant to be meeting me here.
Ho ho. Right. And I suppose like, okay, so clear something up for me, because this is something that isn't quite Agatha's basement, right? Her like magical witchy realm. Is that a real place, or did she use witchy powers to like teleport them into her magical realm? Like, what I'm getting at here is Wanda. We find out at the end of this episode, Wanda and Vision were planning on building their own house in this small town of New Jersey, which is why Wanda went there. Incredibly lame reason, but
I liked it. I actually like as implausible as it is that like she doesn't have a visa and he's a robot. How do you buy property in that situation? I also adore the fact that when she
Have rich friends is the answer to that question.
That is, yeah. Have Tony Stark just write it off for you. I do love that when she opens the deed, by the way, it's like Wanda Maximoff and the Vision, as if like the Vision's first name is the, which I really adore. It's like Vision the. Sorry to cut you off there.
oh no, but like, yeah, to me it was, you know, like why they were there was a big, like, again, another one of those like, why are they there? Who? Oh, she was going there anyway. Right?
I like the idea of her building the life that she never really had. The only problem is I would much rather it was a conscious choice that she made with agency. I like that's my problem. Like, I can see her being like, well, this is the life I was promised. This is the life that I deserve. This is the life that I am entitled to. Because again, she is literally making Westview great again. Like, it's not even particularly subtle. It's like, no. I've had it tough. You don't understand how tough it's been for me, a character with superpowers and privilege, who can like move things with my mind and who like disappeared for 5 years, wasn't here for any of that crap. You know, you don't know how hard it's been for me to deal with this stuff. So just, you know, back off and respect it and like just acknowledge that. That's all I'm asking.
I guess that's my, like, one of my big issues is I like all of these beats, but I think they are conflicting with one of the big conceits of the show, which is one, the mystery conceit, and two, the taking us through the eras of television. And if I were to take all of the footage available, re-edit it into something a little more linear, I think we would have all of these nice story beats, just not the shtick of the show. So I get it that it's a balancing act, but here's
WandaVision recut.
Ooh, I'm
Coming
on
to the
it.
Escapist movie channel now.
Here's the real question. Did she just so happen to buy property next door to a witch's lair?
See, I don't think that's the case. Because was it in the comics? Wasn't that something that did happen? Like they just so happened to move into a neighborhood that had magic people next to them.
Yes.
Like I think they avoided that this go round because Agatha seems to have arrived after she felt that magic power. She's like, oh, this is some magic.
Yeah.
So let me go see what's going on there. And her entire performance while in the Hex was her trying to get close to Wanda and figure out what was happening. Her using Pietro to question her was to try to figure out what was happening. And like, if they could have made that, if they could have, you know, hinted at that sort of thing before that Agatha reveal, I'd have been much more happy with it. Instead, they had her as pretty much an outsider who we all knew was suspicious. But she was suspicious because we knew her name was Agnes and it was close to Agatha. It wasn't because of anything else she was really. And to be fair, yes, like she was doing weird stuff, but it was because we already knew she was weird.
And also, she was the biggest name in the cast, in the guest cast. It's like
Right.
like Law and Order. When Robin Williams shows up as a guest star in Law and Order, you're like, I know who did it this week.
Right, yeah, like so, like they did all of this overcorrection to pull us away from her. That honestly, it worked. I was convinced that she was a red herring and that there was something else going on because I wanted so badly to believe that they were trying to outsmart us. But I feel like they like, and the fact that they're so aware of the meta. Like they used it. They used it literally to troll us rather than to tell a good story. Like they didn't mix that into the plot in an interesting way.
Right.
They used it to throw us off the scent of the story that they were telling from the very beginning that we all pretty much guessed. And that's what's so disappointing.
Unlike, and Marvel has done this incredibly well in the past. I'm looking at you, Iron Man 3, my favorite of all the MCU movies, where they were literally trolling us with the villain, but it was so smoothly incorporated into the narrative that it was perfect.
And however, like again, this is not the Iron Man 3 podcast. That will come later. But yeah, I know. We'll talk.
Yeah,
but
great.
the thing with Iron Man 3, and like this is a big thing for me. Iron Man 3 in 2013 was one of the big moments that you started seeing fan backlash. It was around the time I think Sean O'Connell actually published an article on Cinema Blend titled Iron Man 3 screws up the Mandarin and you or real fans should be pissed.
Oh.
And it's like, but like that's the moment at which you had fandom go, no, we don't want surprises. We want fidelity. We want things that are from the comic. We want things that are faithful. We don't want things that surprise or confuse us or catch us off guard. And like that, no, like, I mean, and then you can tie that into kind of, stuff that happened later, 2017, all the stuff that was coming down the track in terms of like fandom culture. But like 2013, and again, notably the point at which you got Star Trek Into Darkness as well, which was voted like the worst Star Trek movie at a big Star Trek convention around the same time all this was happening. People evidently not having seen The Final Frontier or Star Trek Nemesis. I don't know. I can only guess. Yeah, Darren's taking no prisoners today. But like that's my thing, is that I love Iron Man 3, but I also look at it and I suspect nobody at Marvel is ever going to do something that bold again.
Ugh. It's such a shame because like that was my hope, and there is all this meta contextual stuff like Casey was saying, and we are all a part of that. We're reading casting information. Well, some of us have read a bunch of the comics. We know all of this extra information, and they have the ability to use that against us to still give us great stories, but also surprise us. And WandaVision's big disappointment for me is that they're not. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, right? I want to come back to some stuff that I actually really liked about the episode. Like, I really liked that again, this is the thing where it's the potential of WandaVision that I seem to like more than the reality of it, which is why when you guys were all at the start, like, we want to get to the plot, and Darren's like, no, I really want to appreciate the 1950s and 1960s sitcom stuff they're doing here, and you're like, no, we got to rip ahead, we got to get to the plot. I'm like, no, but that's just gonna be disappointing. But I mean, I really love early on that image that you have, and it's arguably like it should be the centerpiece of the show. It should be what the show is built around, where you have the Stark bomb ticking with this little red light on it, and the American sitcom playing in TV in the rubble, and that idea of that is Wanda's childhood, that image right there. It's the American bomb and the American sitcom. It's two huge influences that impacted on a young girl who lived thousands of miles away from the United States, shaped her identity, warped her self-perception, and warped the way in which she saw the world, and that's what WandaVision is doing. And it's like, it's kind of there, but we're also going to throw in, it was also some magic as well. And it's like, no, just do the two things. What I want to ask you guys, because this is the thing about next week, and here's the thing, there are rumors about a hidden 10th episode, and we might come back to that in a moment, because of course there are always rumors. Do you not hear these? Have you not heard these?
I have not heard this, no.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this.
Okay, so very quickly, it's been noted that Falcon and the Winter Soldier is launching on March 19th. which means that there will be a week gap between the 9th episode of WandaVision and Falcon the Winter Soldier. The assumption had been the choice to double up the first 2 episodes of WandaVision had pushed it back, and they simply hadn't moved Winter Soldier to fill the gap. How and ever, there have been suggestions from various, I know, right? Basically, agents representing, like, background characters or minor characters or characters who play like Hayward's assistant have said, oh, by the way, the character is appearing in episodes 6, 7, 9, and 10 of WandaVision. And people have meant to go, wait, that's kind of suspicious, isn't it? And so, wondering if that gap might be filled with a hidden 10th episode. I'm kind of curious about that. I wonder if that would be a real surprise.
Don't we already know that, like, the last episode is going to be a longer episode? Like, episode 9 is going to be a longer, so it could just be like a two-parter.
Yeah, this one was like 48 minutes or something like that, which I think was the longest of all of them so far.
Yes.
Yeah, so it could be.
I think it's more likely that in true sitcom fashion, we're going to have a two-parter for a finale.
Season finale.
Which is great. I love it. And so it's very possible they're going to split it up into 2 episodes, even though they're going to air like as one chunk. That's possible.
Yeah.
Or hidden episode. That's fun too.
And my actual question here for Casey and Jack, the wonderful like mid-credits appearance of White Vision, right? And first of all, do we think Paul Bettany has a fantastically devilish sense of humor? And that was the cameo to which he was alluding. He was finally going to get to share the screen with an actor with whom he had wanted to work for years. And there were going to be fireworks between them. And it's like, damn you, Paul Bettany. I see what you did there. You're a genius. I love it. And second question is, and this is the big one in terms of plot. Do we think 2 outcomes here? The one is the outcome that we've been kind of speculating so far, which is that like Wanda has to accept that Vision is gone, and if that happens, she is going to have to destroy Vision's body again, which seems almost sadistic, but also a great way to wring tension from the audience. Or alternatively, do we think that they're going to use this as a MacGuffin? So the version of Vision that Wanda has created from her memory or magicked into existence, do we think that he is going to be put back into the functioning body and override him and bring him back to life? Which of those 2 outcomes, or a hypothetical third one, do we see happening? So Jack or Casey?
Ooh, the absolute most cynical part of me says that they're going to put good Vision's brain in bad Vision's body to create yet another version of Vision. That way they can have their cake and eat it too. Oh, but I don't want to be that cynical. Oh, that hurts me.
I love that I offloaded it onto you. I didn't. I said it out loud. I was the one who suggested it, but I'm not the villain here. You are. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, I didn't even put that together as a possibility.
No.
Because you know what? I think I'm gonna go the other way. I don't think that they'll do the meshing of those 2 visions at all, because Wanda specifically says when she's at the body, like, I don't feel you. Whatever, right? And if we think about the conversation that she and Vision had, where he says like, "What is grief?" but love persisting and whatnot. They're gonna go for the whole Vision is like the real Vision is the Vision we made along the way, and so that Vision I think is gonna get to stay. And like the bad Vision is, the shell of the past and whatever. So that's the literal manifestation of her grief that she will somehow defeat, and then she can live happily ever after with the new Vision that she's made from her full heart or whatnot.
Right. But okay, or third option here is we kind of know that I guess we'll call him like Hex Vision versus White Vision. Hex Vision can't survive outside the Hex.
Yeah.
We've seen that.
That's the thing.
And we can only presume that White Vision is going to be, pure sword evil robot, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So perhaps Wanda will be offered this choice, like, hey, you have the power. You can put your vision in this body and have your vision, but at like maybe a cost to her children, or maybe like, but you got to work with sword, or, like some sort of dark caveat, or it could just be as simple as like, she understands, like she is finally ready to let go of Vision. Maybe this episode being her therapy, finally confronting all of her trauma. She says, no, I'm ready to let go Vision. So she chooses to let Vision go and not meld them, but she is offered. That's my official prediction. Wanda will be offered the chance to merge the two and have her Vision and eat him too.
Well, whatever they do in the comfort of their own comfortably separated upstairs bedroom is their own business, Jack. And final one before we go then. With the revelation that Pietro is fake Pietro, or fake-tro, if you will, are we entirely sure? I am personally not entirely sure that we are writing off the multiverse, because we know that Strange is involved. We know she's in Multiverse of Madness, and we had the Nexus stuff coming in. And the fact that, like, I think KC pointed out a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the Yo Magic commercial. The Yo Magic commercial is Agnes. The Yo Magic commercial is Agnes feasting on her magic, which hasn't happened yet. Which leads me to believe that the Nexus commercial last week might be something that's not happening yet as well. So are we entirely writing off the multiverse? Are we entirely suggesting that, like, fake Pietro just happens to be some poor soul who looks like Evan Peters? Or do we think that there is more to be unveiled there next week?
Like, honestly, I do think I'm at the point now where I'm writing it off. Like, they had the perfect opportunity to start, throwing in those seeds, and instead they chose to toy with us with that knowledge. So like based on that and like other ways they've kind of trolled us with just meta information, I feel like this isn't the place where this was supposed to happen. They just took advantage of the fact that we all know what's going to happen eventually. So I don't think we're gonna get any real seeds for the multiverse here. We'll have to wait till, I guess, maybe that Doctor Strange movie for that to begin.
I'm calling this purposeful seeding. Very similar to Peter Parker.
The
very, very similar to Peter Parker appearing in Iron Man 2. For anyone who hasn't seen Iron Man 2, a small child who would be roughly Peter Parker's age is at the Science Expo and, puts up a little toy thing to stop a robot. Iron Man helps him, flies off. Later, they said, oh, that was actually Peter Parker Spider-Man as a young child, because it just so happened to line up. So I'm going to be with Casey that they are not going to set up the multiverse, but they are going to put something in there so later when the multiverse is set up, they can say, oh, look, we put a little thing in WandaVision. Didn't you get it? But it will be so tangential and so minor that it won't be actually consequential.
All right. And then final question for you guys. It's great. I love asking questions because it means I don't have to make predictions. Something that occurred to me during the week is that, like, because watching the show, the show has outsmarted us by us attempting to outsmart it, basically. We've always, like, extrapolated several directions out, and it's tended to follow the path of least resistance. So it's like, didn't you know that it was Agnes all along? It's like, yes, we did, but we assumed it was so obvious that it wouldn't be. And it's like, well, fool you, viewer. So I do wonder... Is it possible that, who will Jimmy Woo's secret undercover informant be? And is it possible it's Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, given Paul Rudd's history in sitcoms? Is it possible that, like, after Endgame, Ant-Man and his family may have been moved to Westview? Because obviously he was being held by the FBI following the Sokovia Accords or what have you. Like, that's what I'm wondering now. Is like, have we been overthinking who's the celebrity cameo guest star going to be? And it's just, is it going to turn out that Ant-Man was there all along? He was just tiny.
Does that work with the timeline? He's just tiny. Does that work with because
yeah, it's only been 5 days. It would be very hard for them to have moved after a couple of weeks after the sort of whatever to have moved the family to Westview. So I guess probably not. But that was what I was thinking. Is like the most obvious answer is that Jimmy Woo is associated with the character that we know Jimmy Woo is associated with.
I got a big swing. Swing here. Are you ready for this? This is absolutely not going to happen, but I'm going to say it out loud because if it does, it would be hilarious. So everything's wrapped up, right? The story's wrapped up, and maybe this is like a post-credit, like little 30-second thing. Jimmy Woo finally meets up with his person who is under. I always forget the name.
I think it's CI. Is it CI covered?
Yeah, but what do you call it when you move someone? Witness protection.
Witness protection. Yes.
I can never remember that name. So Jimmy Woo meets up with his CI who is in witness protection, and it's Ryan Reynolds. It's Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. and they just get a tiny little scene. We see a little bit of Deadpool, and Deadpool might even turn to the camera and goes, "That was weird, wasn't it?"
I don't know how I'd feel about that, honestly.
That's my huge swing, never having played baseball before. That's what that is.
I think, like, regardless of however wrong we've been about other predictions about WandaVision, if you hit that one out, like, I think you are the prediction god.
Yes.
I'm willing to concede if that actually turns out to be true.
I mean, we know they've recently announced that they will be making Deadpool movies. Still, the Marvel will be producing Deadpool movies. That was a big announcement right around the start of WandaVision. So he's happy with the Marvel team. That would fit as far as like a little multiverse teaser, but also it's Deadpool, so he can do whatever he wants. He breaks the fourth wall all the time. Huh?
I think my big issue with that, though, is that, like, Deadpool is R-rated, and Disney Plus, at least in the States and overseas, having a separate star brand is, PG-13 at most. I mean,
Sure.
Again, we should have called the fact that Wanda wasn't weekends at Burnsying her dead boyfriend because it's a PG-13. Like, I literally said on this...
we justified it because he was a synthetic being.
Yeah.
So,
I remember I actually said, like, I will give the show an extra star if she is. So I guess I'm going to take that extra star, just peel it off the top here, and just put it back in my pocket.
Sure.
But yeah, I do wonder, like, would you get away with Deadpool in a Disney Plus show?
Absolutely
And
not.
I hate that that's the line for Darren.
I mean, they did make a PG-13 version of the rated R movie. So
That's right.
I do think that he's popular enough that they would fit it in if it was within their agenda to do so.
Yeah.
Like if the next big push is to, start talking about Deadpool stuff, then sure, I can see it.
I think it's just a joke. I think what's significantly more likely is a MCU character who has committed a ton of crimes, but is now working with back within the system, who we also know has a movie or possibly show coming up. It's probably Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye.
Ooh.
Nobody knows about his crimes, though. Like, he wasn't, like, arrested, was he?
Well, I suppose he wasn't arrested. He was doing it in a mask, but again, that might be a big swing.
That's a good guess, though.
We know that Hawkeye has a thing coming up, so that could just be, again, a tiny little seed.
And my big question is, has anybody talked to his wife about the stuff that he got up to while she was gone? Because, I mean, you have to imagine how awkward that conversation is. Now, we need to talk about what Clint did while you're gone. It's like, look, I was gone for 5 years. I'm an open-minded woman. I understand that he had needs and desires. Like, no, he murdered literally hundreds of people. It's like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Savagely murdered, like, everybody.
So he didn't sleep with anybody else? All right, fine. No skin off my back.
I guess I'll go back to my farm where he makes me stay.
He never introduces me to his work friends. Now I know why.
So, like, those are well, like, one's obviously a big swing. I think Jeremy Renner's slightly more likely, or it might just be something that they never feel like they need to answer because we've all forgotten.
Yeah, I'm in that camp. I feel like Jimmy Woo, like, kind of haphazardly said, like, this is why I was around, but no one really cares. There's superhero stuff going on, Jimmy. Focus.
I love that Casey's basically given up on, like, the movie and the show answering any of his questions. It's
I legitimately have. Like, I was so hyped for the mystery, and this is part of the reason why I kind of don't like these mystery type shows in general.
Yeah,
is because the things that they start making you think could happen oftentimes are so much better than what actually happens. Yeah. But it's your own fault because you're the one who starts thinking about what could happen.
Yeah.
No, but
like
that's
they ask you to answer. They ask you to ask the question, and once you do, they disappoint you with their answer. So, like,
well, and that's the pacing issue of a good detective story. Is like you need to pace out your answers so you are making sure your audience isn't creating a better story than the one you're telling. And that to me is like the biggest. Like overall, I'm enjoying it, but that's my biggest problem with WandaVision. Is we've had too much time to contemplate better stories or better stories for us, right? Yeah. And so I'm with you.
All right. So, any bold predictions for next week? Is it the season finale that might be Jack or Casey?
Oh,
here's Here's something that I hope doesn't happen, but if it happens, I predicted it. Okay.
Yes.
When the hex is finally broken and all of the citizens who have been trapped are now set free, I'm very fearful that some of them, if not all of them, will somehow collectively thank Wanda. Like they'll tell her,
God.
I was having a rough go of it. You gave me an opportunity to kind of recatch myself, or at the very least, you made me realize that life is worth living or something, because this was a terrible situation, and now I want to do better and make the rest of my life worth whatever. So they'll be like, thank you,
so
Scarlet Witch.
right. You're so right. Oh, you really weren't that bad, Scarlet Witch. Oh.
You've saved my marriage. Unemployment in this town was just through the roof. Now everybody's working at the computation factory.
We're gonna have such a big tourist boon because of the hex here that our town is saved. You did it,
Yeah.
Wanda.
Yep.
Quick
I
shout
hope
out,
that is
actually.
not the case, but I think that's where we're going.
Quick shout out, actually, very quickly. I love that the marquee changes in the cinema from putting the fun and dysfunction to Big Red, which is a classic Disney movie, but was also the secret code name of the show while they were filming it, and Kidnapped, which was another 1960 kind of Disney movie as well. Both of which you can stream on Disney Plus, because Disney own everything.
Because Disney owns everything, and that is going to be a legitimate problem in the near future. That's our downer for this episode.
We're all living in Wanda's bubble.
That's another prediction for you.
In any case, thank you everyone for watching and or listening to this. It is super fun to have these conversations about a show which overall I am enjoying, even though I complain about it a lot, because that's the life of a nerd. But once again, I've been Jack Packard.
I'm Darren Mooney.
I'm Casey Wosu.
And we'll see you next time, true believers.